Hey again everyone, and welcome back to the channel for the next installment in our new figure showcase series. And if you're new to the channel, this is usually when I get a chance to take a quick look at a new figure I'm adding into the collection and give you my thoughts. More often than not, it will be a newer release, but at times I do go back and pick up some older pieces. So for today's episode, we're going to be taking a look at the Jane Foster Mighty Thor 6-scale figure from Hot Toys based on her appearance in Marvel's Thor Love and Thunder. And this figure does bring the Thor Love and Thunder line to a conclusion. And with all said and done, it was actually a pretty decent lineup of figures, getting a total of 4 from Hot Toys and even a third-party version of Korg that was pretty decent for what it was. So look, not going to spend too much time on the movie since I've given my thoughts on it before, but I will tell you I liked the Jane Foster character in the movies overall that she's been in. She was funny and had some really great moments as well. I think she was great in this one as well, and she had a very strong storyline overall, although you can argue that maybe it wasn't necessarily done the justice that it deserved. But I think she was great in the movie, and it really wasn't surprising to me that Hot Toys decided to make her. So Sideshow did put her up as a special edition timed exclusive, which adds in this extra battle damage helmet, which is pretty cool, and that is the version we'll be looking at today. So let's take a look at everything out of the box and see what we're getting here. And she is a simpler figure, but she comes with some highlight pieces. So obviously you get a couple of spare hands, and then you get 2 versions of Mjolnir. The first being the assembled version with an effect piece, and then the standout one for me is this effect fully dispersed Mjolnir. And then what you see in the back are the unmasked Jane Foster sculpt and the battle damaged helmet, as well as the standard hexagonal base with the flight pole. So nothing crazy here, but what we get is, I think, pretty decent. So let's jump into those accessories and take a look at the hands. So just 3 pairs, the pair of fists that are already on the figure out of the box, and then you get a pair of splayed out hands for, I guess, stances, and then a pair of gripping hands to hold Mjolnir. But that's about it. Hands are gloved, and I will say the fingers do lack some of the details that we've seen with figures like Yelena or the Black Widow, particularly at the nails, but that's a nitpick. The gloves are actually really nicely done with a maroon and armored element at the back of the hand, and at the knuckles you see the armored pieces, so it's about what you'd expect from this. Now next, we get into Mjolnir. So this has a light up feature that we've seen before. I'll be honest, I just got a little lazy and didn't put in the batteries because this is lit using button cells, so obviously not a feature I'm going to make a ton of use for. But it does look good, and the highlight for me is the sculpt on the surface of the hammer. On all sides, you basically show the cracks from the reassembled Mjolnir. The handle itself also has that nice intricate detail with the actual fabric at the end of the hammer, and there is a lightning effect on the top that can be removed. This one is definitely more in line with the traditional effect pieces as opposed to the ones that came with the Thor, but it looks great. Now the next accessory is pretty cool, and I know first of all that some people don't like these effect pieces, but I love them, and I was wondering how Hot Toys was going to do this, but it's almost in line with some of the effects we got with the Shang-Chi figures. But you're basically getting the fully disassembled Mjolnir bound together by this lightning effect that's holding all the small broken pieces of the hammer. Granted, in the movie they do become mini projectiles, but this is a great way of showcasing that with all the different sized and shaped components. Now they're not detachable, so don't try to pull them apart, and the effect piece has some flex, but don't try to pose it or you'll break it. But very cool piece, and of course the handle is identical to the fully assembled version. Now let's get to the figure itself, and we're going to start with the unmasked sculpt, which is my favorite. So look, I think there is a great likeness to Natalie Portman here. Now, unlike some other characters that have wrinkles, I do think this is a harder portrait to get right, because if you look at her in the movie, she doesn't have those pronounced wrinkles or features. So I do think it's a little harder, but Hot Toys did an amazing job. Eyes look great, although this is actually a negative that I'm going to mention here. The eyes, that rolling eye system, they're a bit loose on mine. And what I found while I was switching the sculpts in particular is that any little bump or push against the lever that controls the eyes, and you have to realign because they just shift. So that's annoying. Now hair is sculpted, but it looks amazing, and Hot Toys, you gotta give them credit at this point. They pretty much have the sculpted hair thing locked down. This isn't an elaborate hairstyle, but they still managed to create this layered look with some good details and just enough flex so that you can pose the sculpt a little bit. Just looks amazing. Now the helmeted sculpt, pretty much the same face, just with the hair removed so that you can fit the helmet on. I do wish this one had a slightly different expression just to give you something a little different. It still looks good with the nice detailing and really draws your attention to the eyes. And I like the combined silver and red elements throughout, just tying the look together. Now the wings on the side of the helmet look great, but here's another issue. The mechanism for the helmet basically requires you to pop the wings off, and then you separate the two halves of the helmet pieces, swap out to the battle damage, and use the wings again. Problem is, the wings just basically peg into spots on the helmet, and unfortunately, they're a little loose, and any little shift, or even if you just tap them, and they tend to fall off. Now, part of me would say use glue dots or blue tack. You don't want anything permanent, but it's just something that's annoying and to be aware of. Now, the special edition is the damaged helmet that reveals a good portion of her face. It's pretty cool, and it's interesting to me that they're giving you this full second helmet, because essentially all you need is the swappable front piece, but that's what they decided to do, so I'm not going to argue with it. And it looks good. Very similar to what we saw in the movie. Only thing here, and you'll see it in the movie snapshot that I included, I kind of wish they had given us a bloodied face as well. It's a very specific part in the movie. And I mean, you can modify it yourself, and then at the end of the day, it's just an extra piece, but it just looks a little odd with a relatively pristine, sculpt. Now the rest of the figure is amazing. Hot Toys killed it here, and it helps that her suit is a nice set of colors that match. Her cape is a bright red, and it's fully wired and seems to offset or at least jive well with the slightly darker colors of the rest of her suit, which includes a combination of silver armored elements, black, and maroon. The design of the chest armor is very much in line with the Valkyrie and Thor figure and their armor, so it just looks great. Right, the skirt elements are plastic feeling material, almost like a vinyl, with some screen printing on them. One of mine was folded over in the box, so you can see it folded back in the shots, and I'm just going to have to work on trying to straighten that out. And the pants are a pleather-like material, but they also contain mixed media. So for example, you get some pleather segments down her leg, along with some actual fabric, which actually allows for good posability. And then you get some nice combined armor on the knee and silver armor on her lower legs that also includes some wing elements. So very classy looking figure. There is one thing I wanted to bring to your attention though, and I think it's an issue with the head swaps, because I had this happen to me, and I've seen posts and spoken to other people who have this figure that also had it happen. So what you're seeing on screen is the peg mechanism that holds both the unhelmeted and helmeted sculpts onto the neck. So instead of just having a peg, as Hot Toys used to do, they now have this black adapter that sits on top of the peg and sockets into the sculpt. And you can see the small clips at the top where it connects to the head. So what's happening with the unmasked head in particular is that when you go to remove it, this black adapter is coming off of the peg and staying logged into the sculpt. So that's an issue. You might be able to see it, but my adapter here has a scrape on the front, and that's where I carefully had to put in a pair of needle nose pliers and then had to grip that piece and pull it out of the socket. So just be careful, and like I said, it is a bit of a headache. I appreciate Hot Toys trying to innovate here, but that piece getting in the head, not great, so just keep an eye out. Okay, so look, I love the figure. I think the likeness is amazing, and she poses really well. The arms are rubber seamless material and they bend well. Everything just works nicely and looks good. I do think the effect piece is great, but just takes a little patience in finding some poses that work well with it. Even the ones I'm showing here aren't really my favorite, so just might require some more tweaks. Look, there's no denying that it's a great looking figure, with what I think is an amazing unhelmeted sculpt. And I'm leaning towards displaying her with that exposed Jane Foster sculpt. I just don't know that I can hide that. And unlike the Thor, where I've gotten tons of versions of Thor with an exposed face sculpt, there I was 100% inclined to use the helmet. Here it's a little different because this is the only version of Jane Foster we've actually gotten. And like I said, I think the figure overall looks stunning, and it's a great way to cap off this Thor Love and Thunder line, which honestly turned out better than I think any of us expected, particularly considering how divisive the movie was. But a good number of figures, and they all look great. I will say, I think of the Hot Toys releases, this is the one that has the most issues, surprisingly. Valkyrie and Gore were almost perfect in my mind. The deluxe Thor looks good, amazing, and minus some issues with the magnetic head, was really good. This one looks good, but definitely has a lot more things to watch out for. So because of that, from an overall point of view, I do think it's the weakest of the bunch. Still looks great, but just has a few too many issues that hold it back in my opinion. But look, for me as a Marvel fan, I'm almost always happy to add another figure into the collection, especially a character that we haven't gotten before. So that was a quick look at the Mighty Thor Jane Foster 6-scale figure by Hot Toys. Not a perfect figure, but a very solid one overall. Let me know your thoughts on this one, and as always, thanks for watching, and if you are enjoying the content, please consider dropping a like, comment, or subscribing, and we'll touch base on the next video.